Morning and welcome back. It is now June the 6th and it is a beautiful cloudy morning out here. We did manage to get about 2 millimeters of rain on Saturday evening and about another 1 to 2 millimeters Sunday afternoon. So things are looking not too bad. When you walk into the fields right now, the ground actually looks a little bit muddy. But as soon as you scuff the surface, you can see that we're still good and dry underneath. So that moisture really was not enough to penetrate down into the root zone yet. But it is making things look a little bit better. Like this durum looks better than it has in the last week or so here. So it has definitely helped relieve some stress. We are supposed to be getting thunderstorms later this afternoon, so hopefully that holds true. Here's a barley field. It's looking not too bad this morning. Amazing how much things kind of perked up and turned green even with that tiny amount of rain. This field did get sprayed about 3 days ago with Axial Extreme and 2525. And you can see our kochia is starting to wilt and go down. It ain't dead yet. You can see these growing points are a much lighter color, so they are likely going to die. And these ones look not quite as bad, but it's still really early yet. We pretty much need at least 4 or 5 more days before we can tell for sure whether we're going to have mortality or not. Well, the peas are certainly looking a lot better this week. They have actually gained a little bit of height now. They're starting to come out of the stubble, and we're about 5-6 nodes, so really there's only a few days left for herbicide timing in here. All we sprayed in here so far has just been Assure 2 to control some grassy weeds, because for the most part we're clean of broadleaf weeds because we applied Authority Supreme this spring. And you can actually see the treatment line right on the edge of the field here, pretty much right here. You can see the spray boom didn't cover this area here, and you can see all the kochia right here along the edge. So it's looking like the Authority has done a hell of a job here on the edge of the field. Well, hopefully that little bit of rain gets some of the shallow seeded canola wet enough that it germinates, because right now some of the stands on the dry land are pretty piss poor. You can see we got decent stand there in that row, but then there's basically nothing here. So hopefully we get more. Well, the forecast is for severe thunderstorms later this afternoon or this evening, and it looks like stuff is slowly starting to form out there, so hopefully it happens. The more severe the better. As long as we don't get hail out of it, that would just be the icing on the cake, wouldn't it? Well, the rain finally caught up to me. A little bit of hail in it too, but it's really small, so it's not damaging anything yet. But I guess we'll wait to see if this passes. Well, we finally managed to get about 1/4 inch of rain again late yesterday afternoon and over the evening. Still sprinkling a little bit now, which is looking good. First time I've had to wear gumboots yet this season. This corn here by Nobleford is doing pretty good. We're pretty much just hitting the V1 one collar stage here now. Looking not too bad. We do have some emergence on the dry land, and hopefully it'll get better now. But we're just looking at early herbicide timing in this field now. Not a whole pile of weeds other than some patches of cereals and some canola. But we're going to use it as an opportunity to come in here with some Invita, which is from Nexus BioAg. It's a live biological that will help this corn to make its own nitrogen for the season. So we're going to try some in here. Up here by Carmangay, we got a lot of freshly germinated canola, which was wonderful to see because this field was pretty thin. You know, we got some emerging one leaf kind of coming out here, quite a few in about that stage, but really it's a pretty thin stand overall at probably around 1 plant per square foot or less on average. So this should make it come up real nice now. Here's something interesting I find once in a while after a rain. This is a little cloud of springtails, and springtails are a tiny little insect. You'll never be able to see them properly on this camera, but basically they eat decomposing organic matter. They break down organic matter in the soil, and they live in the pore spaces of the soil. When the soil gets saturated, they tend to float to the surface and congregate in puddles like this. So they're always pretty interesting. I've had more than a few phone calls about them over the years from guys thinking they are some kind of pest, but they are not. Somebody's having a lot harder time jumping through the rye than they used to. It is now starting to head out. It's looking very good. We're in head emergence, not in flowering yet, but it's looking pretty good. Although we do have some lodging in the rye where it got rained on particularly hard. Well, here's one of my favorite weeds, just because of how interesting it is. This is goat's beard, we generally call it here, or yellow salsify if you're an American. It kind of looks like grass, and if it hadn't been sprayed by Infinity last week, causing it to turn yellow,
it would probably blend in so well you'd hardly even see it as you walk by. But it has a growth habit much like a dandelion, pulls up a great big yellow flower, has a latex-filled big heavy taproot. So quite an interesting weed. Well, this patch of wild oats and this barley has been sprayed with Liquid Achieve about a week ago now, and while there is a little bit of yellowing here and there, they overall look pretty healthy. You know, the leaves do not pull freely out. There's no pinched off growing points or anything yet, and even the color of them is still suspiciously healthy overall. So I think we can definitely say that these are pretty much resistant to Achieve. Now in barley we don't have much other options other than a group 1, so we're going to hit it with Axial and see what happens. We're back in that canola field that has a severe kochia problem along the edge here. This did get sprayed with a ½ liter of Roundup last week, but you can see what almost looks like a little bit of a mottling effect. You can see a lot of the kochia is turning kind of a lime green color, but there is some conspicuous patches that are still quite healthy looking. So we're going to have to keep an eye on this. We're going to have to hit this again here in probably next week just to try to get what we can. But it's quite interesting. You can see these ones are yellowing quite nicely. And then right here, we're a much healthier color. This patch also demonstrates quite well the effects of competition, even in canola here. You can see this canola here, where there was no competition or very little from the kochia, is doing quite well and is basically starting to cabbage out. Whereas over here in that thick patch, you can see the canola is really struggling. Most of it is 2 to 3 leaf, but it's much, much smaller in comparison. Well, this winter wheat by McGrath is looking much better this week after getting 7/10 of an inch of rain. Much more healthy color, looking a lot better. But you can still tell it is very, very stressed. So we have heads moving up the stems now. We have some awns emerging here, so we are in boot stage. And we are about halfway up to my knee, so it is still going to be a very short and thin crop. Once we get farther to the south, there was a lot more rain, about 1.5 inches in this area. You can see we're a little bit bedraggled on the bottom of some of these plants where the leaves got beaten up a bit by the rain. But overall, this wheat is looking much better, a little bit more perky this week. It's probably going to start sending out new tillers, which is good. It's still early enough. Those tillers have a decent chance of being not too far out of staging with the main head. And we are at herbicide timing in here, which is good because we do have some wild oats here and there, as well as some buckwheat and knotweed and other various weed species in here. Well, after a few warm and windy days, there's not much for mud anywhere anymore, but there is still some pretty good subsurface moisture, and the crops are sure benefiting from it. Although in reality, that ½ inch of moisture won't last for very long, so hopefully we do get some showers like they're forecasting for the weekend. Oh, and now that the mud is gone, I should probably go and wash my truck. It's the first time all year it's really gotten muddy, and if I wash it, it'll rain again for sure, right?